So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Married with Nezuko? So let's start the series. In the Valley of Death, two bodies violently collided. A conflict that had been brought on by a desire for unfathomable power. Their bond, which had been forged over months of cooperation and teamwork, was being ripped apart for the prospect of power. The clashing shapes barely seemed like what they had before. A tiny adolescent's torso sprouted large gray wings composed of several long-fingered hands. This youngster could no longer be regarded as Naruto's friend because of his swirling Sharingan and pure black eyes. As he charged a hand of chirping lighting, a menacing smile appeared on his face. He was going to bid his lone friend and teammate Naruto farewell today. He wanted the power, thus this had to be done. However, this battle had altered more than just the Uchiha. Naruto's panting form had also undergone a significant transformation. He was completely encased in a blazing cloak of bright red core energy. Two big ears twitched at his teammates' gaunt breathing, and a tail waved behind him. Rudy's eyes followed his friend's tiny movements. He had a deep-seated desire for more proof so that he could let his inner beast run wild and tear the Uchiha to hundreds of pieces, lick away the blood from his hands, and laugh. But since his friend was Naruto, he couldn't and wouldn't. One of his beloved individuals. And he had to show him how much he was loved and needed by getting him home safely. Naruto friend, he bellowed, an old strength pulsating through his vocal cords. The cavern walls reverberated with Naruto's voice. His cries of rage and fury were so loud that not even the sound of the thundering waterfall could stop them. Naruto's right clawed hand flexed, "Come home," and a whirling ball of core energy started to form. The shrieking chirps of 1,000 birds are mixed with a whistling symphony. The Naruto companion growled, "You are even more of a fool if you think I would go back to that pathetic place." He could feel the promised strength flowing through his veins, and after he got rid of this one troublesome idot from his life, there would undoubtedly be more. Even yet, he was unable to look the blonde in the eyes. Something inside of him cried out for him to flee every time he looked into those fiery red eyes. Should turn around and flee in all directions. What was he? Then I'll have to bring you home myself, even if that means I have to break every bone in your body. At the threat, Naruto's pal felt a throb of something akin to fear in his chest. The illogical fear was swallowed. Why did he fear this fool? He was a fool to be afraid of Naruto of all people, the dead last student of the entire school year. Come at me then and try, the blonde was urged by the Naruto pal. With a violent surge of core energy, the orange idiot charged toward him, and he leaped to the side. Naruto vanished into a zigzag pattern of orange and fiery crimson. With his sandaled feet softly adhering to the protruding rock walls, Naruto's friend leaped to avoid the outstretched clawed hand. He could see water particles dancing in the air with the Sharingan, and it felt like an endless stream of tears as they hit him and the surrounding surfaces. As though the gods were aware of his plans and wept for the helpless soul he had to take. As his friend evaded his blow, Naruto twisted his body in midair. At the base of the granite cliffs, his feet slid on the chopping water. The abrupt movement caused Naruto's neck tendons to pop as his head snapped up. Snarling, Naruto sent a quick surge of core energy through his feet as his gaze fell on the Sharingan's whirling tomo. The water exploded all around him as the charge sent him hurtling through the air. The whirling wind ball power was still in his one hand, and when the core energy of the nine-tail was added, it took on a swirling purple color. With his fingers starting to ache from holding such a potent spirit art for so long, Naruto's pal boosted his thunder power. Here, at this very moment, was the time. He ran down the rock wall and hurried forward. He didn't know how long this would go on if he didn't stop it now. The body of Naruto adhered to the side of the cliff. He too started running in the direction of his Naruto companion, his feet biting into the rugged terrain. They would come together in the center. A sphere of swirling winds and a crackling hand of wild lightning. Here, both strikes would collide. Furthermore, their futures will never be the same. For the two fighting teammates, time seemed to slow down and their senses became more acute. They could hear each other's tense breathing and thumping heartbeats, and they could see their reflection in each other's eyes. There was an explosive force when the two strong core energy attacks collided. Their bodies were startled by the recoil, which also tore tendons and muscles. Naruto's eyes followed the movement as his friend's thunder power appeared to slide millimeters from the wind ball power's cutting winds. Then, with mountainous strength, Naruto pushed his wind ball power to the side, meeting the thunder power's lightning head-on. When the two core energies came together, they merged. Something shouted deep inside Naruto, a sound that portended terrible things to come. Rather than causing the guys to explode, the attacks merely made them bigger. Both Naruto and his friend's core energy were being depleted more and more. It was previously claimed that their world was created by a massive energy explosion, and that what could be made could be unmade since the leftover energy became core energy. Both guys started to feel the strain from the intense core energy pull. Naruto's companion passed out far earlier than Naruto and plunged into the wild waters below. Naruto's core energy, which is typically blue, was starting to become crimson. The nine-tail inside of him was yelling at him to halt. But there was nothing he could do. And before he knew it, this odd, unplanned incident had permanently altered his life. Suddenly, the huge collection of core energy started to ripple, its edges throbbing with a heat Naruto had never experienced before. In an attempt to extricate himself, he dug his fingers into his own flesh and tried to pull his arm away. Instead, he was drawn in by the core energy mass. The bright energy gradually engulfed Naruto's body inch by inch until he was entirely covered. The energy mass then collapsed inward, forming a tiny black wormhole. After absorbing rocks and water, it vanished, leaving no sign of the orange ninja. Neither boy was there when Kakashi got there. Even Pakken was unable to detect a scent trail. He dropped to his knees and began to cry uncontrollably, allowing them to pool with the raindrops below. Both his sensei and them had been let down by him. Naruto was released from the mass of energy after what felt like hours. He opens his eyes in time to witness his own descent from the starry sky. His broken and wounded arms reached for anything to prevent his fall, but there was nothing around to cling to. As a result, he fell and struck the dirt-filled road with great force. Any consciousness he managed to regain was lost in a swirling whirlpool of blackness and white stars when his skull banged hard. Naruto might have realized that his descent put him directly next to an antique Japanese-style house if he hadn't struck his head. He was older than any ninja he had seen in Hyde. He would see that the occupants of the residence were drawn to his abrupt entrance and noisy landing. A loud boom reverberated through the butterfly mansion's silent courtyard. When Tanjiro's eyes opened, he raised a hand to deter Sumi, Kigo, and Naho from striking him for losing his focus. He was awakened by something that happened just now. The air smelled like blood, tears, and scorched ozone as he inhaled deeply. "Hey Tanjiro," Zenitsu said in a loud whisper. "Did you hear that too? Whatever that was, it shook me awake." Kakashi yelled, flaring his arms and legs as he sprang out of bed. "Oomph! Let's go find out," he said. "It might be a demon trying to break in." Tanjiro whispered to his pal, "Kakashi, please be quiet, there are others who are trying to sleep." The lad with the boar head nodded. The three girls nodded before taking a seat on the ground. "But, I do agree with checking it out. Sumi, Naho, and Kigo, please stay here." The three of them slipped out of their room together, moving as stealthily as they could across the wooden walkway to the courtyard's entrance gate. They all froze and turned their heads as someone asked, "Boys, where do you think you're going?" Under the moonlight, they saw Shinobu and Kaneo remaining in uniform. I hope you weren't planning to investigate that loud boom when you don't have your weapons and aren't even fully healed. I sure hope that wasn't the case, as you need to heal up. It would be a very silly idea. No, Zenitsu fought back a lie. Shinobu dragged her purple eyes over each of their faces and said, because it seemed like that's what you were planning. The young demon slayers all agreed and accompanied Shinobu and Kaneo to the entrance gate. Since you're awake as it is, you may follow. But, you must stay behind the wall at all times. Kaneo-chan and I will look. To avoid drawing attention to themselves, they all proceeded gently. Even Kakashi moved silently, bare feet treading on loose pebbles and burnt leaves. Kaneo and Shinobu leaped the wall of the estate and landed on the other side with ease. They hardly make a sound with their booted feet. The three lads did the same, but instead of jumping down, they huddled together in their white clothes and supported themselves on the wall. Near where Shinobu and Kaneo were standing, they noticed a crumpled body on the ground. The most of the person's clothes appeared to have burned away, leaving only a vivid pair of orange pants. The boy appeared to be quite young. Are they dead? Kakashi asked in a barely audible whisper that was the only way he knew how. Zenitsu remarks, no, I can hear labored breathing. It sounds wet. Watching the girls approach the limp figure, Tanjiro shakes his head. It was a new bleed, and he could smell the metallic scent of fresh blood. Raising her sword, Shinobu prodded the bleeding form. The body jerked. Hello, are you okay? The boy tried to inhale deeply, but his chest heaved. Shinobu crouched close to the boy's head, taking a chance. Hello? She had to leap back fast, catching Kaneo in the process. Shinobu-san? Kaneo questioned, looking at her sister figure with her head tilted to the side. That boy, his eyes are glowing. They were, in fact. Naruto's head left like lead, he struggled to focus, and he forced himself up on unsteady arms. His body trembled, his limbs and legs felt like they were filled with shattered glass, and it felt like cotton had been thrust into his skull. However, he didn't recognize anything as he looked around, and the people in front of him didn't look familiar. He needed to release the yelling and screaming pain that was still inside of him. With a shout, Naruto's already lengthy canines became even longer as his jaw dislocated. His bright red eyes searched over everything in an attempt to find something familiar, but they found nothing. He became much more panicked as a result. Leaning forward on his forearms, he forced himself into a quadrupedal position with all four limbs. He pushes forward, his clawed fists burrowing into the soil beneath his palms. He had to get out and find a small spot to curl up and relax, regardless of the excruciating pain in his body. A shimmering blade was just millimeters from his neck, but he was so distracted that he hardly saw it. Dance of the bee sting, true flutter, Naruto swiftly pivoted and twisted away from the blade that was swinging. He growls, saliva frothing and blood streaming from his mouth. The roaring in their mind isn't helping, and it hurts to move and breathe. Second form, Honorable Shadow Plum, he wasn't able to move in time, so the strike landed after another attack came from behind him. Rivulets of ruby blood trickled down his tan flesh as several circling cuts from her katana slashed into his skin like butter. As he yells, Naruto's vocal cords rupture, and he twists around on his back legs, clawed hands reaching out to rip at their attacker's oddly patterned clothing. The voice in his head is telling Naruto, "Attack, boy. Attack. Tear into these people, they've hurt us," but his body isn't listening, his knees give way and he collapses downward. His frail, trembling arms almost arrest his fall before his face hits the floor again. Naruto flinches deeply inside as Kaneo's voice echoes around his mind, saying, "Filthy demon, you will die here." Who was he? Where was he? Was he a demon? Tanjiro, wait. Naruto's bloodshot vision tracks the boy's hazy silhouette as he runs in his direction. Naruto crouches into a smaller ball, fearing more suffering in the future. Stop. Stop. Don't hurt him. With their bare feet kicking up dust and gravel, Zenitsu and Kakashi pursue their friend. Screaming into the night, "Finally I wanna fight too," is Kakashi. Zenitsu whispers, "Kakashi not now," to the boar kid. They were seeing the struggle, which was pitiful from the beginning. The demon youngster was injured and feeble. He sounded frightened to Zenitsu, and those roars may have caused him to tremble between his two companions. However, the demon's voice sounded afraid and frightened rather than angry. As the conflict went on, Tanjiro's physique simply seemed to become more and more tight. And he leaped down the estate wall and hurried in the direction of the girls and bleeding demon just before Kaneo and Shinobu delivered the fatal blow. He and Kakashi were now pursuing their friend, who was protecting an odd demon youngster. Zenitsu cries, "Tanjiro, what are you doing? He is a demon, he needs to be killed," after the lad with the burgundy hair. However, the two friends were aware of how hard it was to get Tanjiro to change his views once he had made up his mind. Shinobu raises her katana as the young demon slayer moves between her and the boy demon's wounded form, saying, "Kamadoke-un. What are you doing?" Tanjiro stands erect, his arms and legs spread wide, his gaze fixed on Shinobu's gleaming blade. He says, "Don't kill him." Tanjiro looks over his shoulder at the gurgling sound of the bleeding demon and says, "Please. He smells good, can't you see he isn't purposely trying to attack anyone? He's just trying to defend himself. Please." He and the other demon slayers watch as his crimson eyes turn a clear blue, his fangs get smaller, and his odd facial features disappear into 3 whiskey-like scars on each cheek. The weird creature passes out and tumbles forward, unconscious again. Tanjiro begs, "Please. Trust me." With a sigh, Shinobu returns her blade to its holder. "Please go get some Kikushi and have them take this boy into a room with no windows. And see to it how we can treat his wounds," she says, turning to face Kaneo, who is still holding her katana. Her purple eyes meet Tanjiro's dark red ones as she twists her head. "You will have to help care for the boy, along with your training. If anything happens it'll be on your shoulders, Tanjiro." Understood. Ch. 2. As the 3 Kikushi took the unconscious demon youngster into a rear room, Tanjiro followed them. Their aggressive treatment of the blonde made him grimace a little. With so many bodies crammed into its 4 walls, the back room resembled a storage space more than anything else. The blonde lad was set on top of an old futon that had been hastily cleaned down and set on the ground. They didn't want to risk his waking up if they attempted to change him, even though his clothes were in ruins and hardly recognizable. As they tied up his limbs to prevent him from escaping when he woke up, the wounds on his body healed in front of their eyes. In an attempt to keep the already feeble demon weak, wisteria was injected into the ropes. The Kikushi handled things quickly, and they soon departed, but not before glancing from Tanjiro to the slumbering demon. Strange boy. Tanjiro positioned himself next to his sister's box, which he had put in the dark corner of the room. Kakashi and Zenitsu, his 2 companions, gathered around the opening of the door. Zenitsu's honey-colored eyes darted from his friend to the unconscious blonde on the futon and said, Tanjiro, I don't think it's wise for you to be staying here. What if he wakes up?" Tanjiro's own wine-colored eyes shift to the slumped figure. "Even if he wakes up, I have this strange feeling that he won't hurt us. I mean, you saw the fight, didn't you too? It seemed so one-sided, like he was just trying to get away. His lengthy limbs were filthy, and despite the fact that his wounds healed quickly, his strangely black skin was covered with hundreds of tiny, slightly pink scars. Tanjiro could see his tiny body behind the thin sheet that was quickly placed over him, and his nails were jagged and uneven. The youngster was obviously undernourished, even if he wasn't skeleton. His ribs protruded beneath his taut skin, and his spinal cord was a bit too noticeable. This boy, whomever he was, had apparently had a difficult existence. Perhaps it was the nature of his older brother that made Tanjiro want to take care of him. Tanjiro took a big breath while leaning back against the wooden wall. The blonde boy still smelled like ozone, but it was less overpowering. His scent was primarily of sea storms and oak forests. How strange. Humph. Well, if Gonpachiro is going to sleep here, then I will too. I can't leave my subordinate with a sleeping demon, Kakashi said as he pushed his way into the tiny, claustrophobic space. He tucked himself into one of the shadowy nooks. His mask's wild boar eyes gazed down at the blonde lying on the futon. To be honest, the blonde devil didn't feel all that horrible. He had experienced the tense muscles of someone in flight, as Gonpachiro had described. Who was he to pass judgment, though? Perhaps the monster was extremely powerful and malevolent. All they could do was wait and see. Squeezing his way into the incredibly small space, Zenitsu moans to himself. His bare feet were oriented toward the box where little Nezuko was resting, and his back was pressed up against the door frame. He was certain that this unidentified child would surprise them since it would soon be daylight. Slowly, morning arrived, the sun's beams starting the day's gentle warming. When Tanjiro's eyes open, he sees a darkened chamber that is a storage space without windows. The darkness nevertheless gives the impression that it is night. However, he was aware that morning had come. He stands up slowly and stretches. The wooden floor wasn't the nicest location to sleep because of back tendons popping. Surprisingly, Kakashi was awake already. Before the sun rose, he spent many hours observing the unidentified man with his boar mask resting on his lap. The blonde had hardly moved over the night and was still comatose. "Oh, good morning, Kakashi." HMMP. Kakashi leaped to his feet and covered his own head with the boars. "I will go see about food." "Sounds good to me," Tanjiro says, nodding. Tanjiro knelt by the blonde's head while Kakashi was away. He placed a hand on his chest and felt the pounding heartbeat beneath it. From his position near the door entrance, Zenitsu snores quietly. Tanjiro looks at the rest of his body and removes his hand from the shifting chest. All of his wounds had already healed, and his chest was bare. Kakashi showed in with a massive platter of food before he could evaluate the lanky blonde any further. He had shoved Zenitsu aside as he entered the room, knocking the bicolored blonde who was asleep to the ground. Zenitsu yelled to wake him up, but he quickly covered his mouth out of concern that he might wake the unidentified youngster. Fast-moving eyes over the still slumbering body. Tanjiro utters the words, "I wonder if I should try waking him up and seeing if he wants to eat," while Kakashi lumbers through the little room. With haste, the blue bicolored lad takes a seat and begins distributing the still warm food. As he shoves hot rice and meat into his mouth, Kakashi's remarks, "I think that's a stupid idea. We don't know if the demon can even eat human food." Tanjiro picks up a tiny platter with crispy fish on it and a bowl of rice. Kakashi was correct when he said, "I feel rude eating beside someone who is unconscious." The three of them ate fast in case the blonde lad woke up. They were carrying a big wooden tub with folded clothing in it and a boiling tea kettle by the handle when they heard a slight knock on the door frame around 30 minutes later, alerting them to a Kikushi. "He needs to be cleaned, and Shinobu-sama said you had to do it." The Kikushi sounded feminine, and before they could express gratitude, they departed. The cleaning supplies and a tiny parcel that looked like white clothing were left behind. In fact, they were wearing the same ones now. Tanjiro picked up their dishes and started filling the wooden tub with hot water, saying, "Looks like we are in charge of cleaning him up and dressing him." The blonde was still out of it, so taking a bath was not too difficult. By the time they reached his torso, the once clear water had turned murky. As he assisted the boy, Kakashi merely complained a little. Tanjiro was responsible for gently rubbing the washcloth along the boy's arms, legs, and torso while Zenitsu wringed it out and re-wetted it as needed. The thick grim around his neck and forehead was removed by the soft cotton-woven handkerchief, which he applied extra gently to his face. The boy's lovely golden hair was covered in thick crusted blood, which they all ignored. They stopped when they noticed the odd scars on his face that resembled whiskers. An unsolved inquiry lingered in the stagnant air. Who would carve these into this boy? As he wrings out the cloth once more, Zenitsu wonders, is it normal for someone to sleep this long? Maybe demons sleep a long time? Nezuko slept for almost 2 whole years. Kakashi responds, 2 years, and rolls the blonde so that Tanjiro can reach his lower back. Tanjiro washes at the dirt and grime, being cautious of the pucked scars on his skin. Zenitsu wrings out the towel once more and moans, what if he sleeps for 2 years like your sister? Would we have to care for him the whole time? I wouldn't want to care for an immobile demon for 2 years. It would be easier though, to care for him, that's for sure. But I don't think he'll sleep that long. Tanjiro and his friends dragged out the wooden tub once he was certain he had washed the most of the boy's body. They then dumped the soiled water onto the rock path jointly. For ease of transportation, they then put the plates inside the wooden tub. They hurriedly changed the comatose youngster into the fresh linen when they got back to the room. After the procedure, both boys' faces were flushed as they turned to face one another. The trio trained outside and had breaks in the shade for the remainder of the day, which went smoothly. Once more, they chose to eat in the little space when it was time for dinner. Nezuko was still dozing off in her box. The blonde boy appeared unfazed by the chaos surrounding him. Kakashi yells, "This is boring," as bits of rice and vegetables shoot out of his mouth. Yeah, totally agree for once, this is a punishment on its own. Do we have to watch him, till he wakes up? Perhaps, but I don't see an issue with caring for him, Tanjiro says, using his chopsticks to pick up some daikon radishes. He was accustomed to taking care of people. It appeared to come effortlessly to him. Reaching over the sleeping youngster, Kakashi moans, and takes some of the same daikon radishes that Tanjiro just finished eating. Abruptly, Kakashi's arm was tightly grasped by a tan hand. "The hell?" exclaims Kakashi, who drops his rice bowl and tries to pull off the fingers with his other hand, but the demon boy's hold is so strong that his ulna and radius bones grind cruelly against one another, and the more he struggles, the tighter the grip becomes. "Hey!" Zenitsu jumps over the meal to assist Kakashi, but despite their best efforts to remove the demon boy's arm, they were unable to free his iron fingers. In addition to tightening the already tight grip on Kakashi's arm, Tanjiro swallows a strangely dry throat and realizes that the demon beneath them didn't make another move towards them. His wine eyes clash with molten red, and even Tanjiro's ears could hear the crushing sound of tendons and bone as he moves to assist his friends. Tanjiro asks the red-eyed monster, "Please release my friend's arm." The demon's eyes move across Tanjiro's face again, and he blinks, transforming the odd molten red eyes into a pair of vivid sky blue ones. The demon croaks, "Sorry," and lets go of Kakashi's arm, which was already deeply bruised. "It's alright, thank you for listening." The child flexes his fingers as if he hadn't seen them before, then lifts his arm up, but the motion is interrupted by the presence of wisteria-soaked ropes knotted around his legs and forearms. His blue eyes meet Tanjiro's once more, this time with obvious bewilderment. "Sorry, you have to understand that we can't fully trust that you won't hurt us, or even yourself." Using only his bare hand, he nearly broke Kakashi's arm. He poses a threat. "I knew that all of this was a poor idea." Pointing a trembling finger at the obviously perplexed blonde demon, Zenitsu shouts. I apologize, he says, frowning and blinking his blue eyes slowly once more. We had no intention of hurting anyone. We? Squeaks. Zenitsu's body was pressed up against Kakashi's, and the beast breeder was presently moving his arm to see whether there was any damage. Fortunately, there were only some bruised muscles and bones. The demon definitely had a firm grasp. He demonstrates to Zenjitsu that he can still use his arm in the proper manner, saying, I am all right, see. Hey Gonpakiro, are we going to kill the demon now? No. Tanjiro just about yells, his eyes track the blonde demon's movements. The curling of his shoulders and tucking of his head, the demon was acting more like prey than an actual threat. I don't think he meant to hurt you. Nerdu. What? Zenitsu snaps. Our name is Nerdu. When the little kid was awake, Tanjiro gave him a gentle grin and realized that Nerdu was actually much smaller than he appeared, looking very young. Tanjiro then picked up an empty bowl nearby and scooped some rice into it, added some meat and greens, and gave it to Nerdu. Hi, Nerdu. Eat here. Zenitsu and Kakashi watched in disbelief as Nerdu simply swallowed mouthful after mouthful without even chewing. The only other person who ever ate like that was Kakashi, but even then he never ate in such a wild manner. Nerdu ate as if he had never eaten before, shoveling the still steaming rice into his mouth by the handful. Tanjiro continued passing small dishes one at a time, and once one bowl was finished, another took its place. You know you can slow down. As he passes over a tiny bowl of salted fish, Tanjiro softly informs Nerdu, there is plenty of food and you won't go hungry here. Nerdu's blue eyes look up at Tanjiro, narrowing as he contemplates what the youngster with the burgundy hair said. He takes his next handful of food more slowly, chewing a little before swallowing. You see? It's like staring into the bright morning sun. The food won't go anywhere, Tanjiro says with a gentle smile, forcing Nerdu to turn away. Nerdu mumbles, sorry, around his mouthful of food, the voice in his head screaming that they need to eat because they need energy and that eating more will help them become stronger. It's okay. Tanjiro carefully extends his hand, pauses when Nerdu recoils violently, then retracts it and puts it back in his lap. I won't hurt you, Nerdu, you're safe here. When Nerdu says, we don't believe you, Tanjiro sees that his voice is layered, as if something darker was wrapped over his typical youthful voice. That's all right. It is difficult to put your trust in strangers. But believe me when I say that nobody here will hurt you, Tanjiro says with a comforting smile. Tanjiro and his pals exchanged a look while Nerdu continued to eat, albeit more slowly, and they all appeared to agree that, judging by his reactions, his frequent flinches and food protection, he must have come from a terrible place. After a few awkward minutes of stillness, Zenitsu cries out, Hey Nerdu, as blue eyes meet warm golden brown ones. Do you know where you are? With his tanned head covered in spiky blonde hair, Nerdu shakes his head and says, I have no idea. We are at the butterfly estate. Nerdu shrugged and started to eat the cooked pork piece by piece, saying, I have no idea where or what that is. Zenitsu leaned back against the fall wall with a contemplative expression on his face, even though it would make sense for normal people to be unaware of the location of the estate. Nerdu was certainly not a normal person, as the hanging wisteria that hung over the estates gave them a pleasant, protective scent, which prevented demons from straying near them. However, it also appeared that Nerdu was unfazed by the wisteria ropes that were still tied to his limbs. Demons, regardless of their strength, were still a little irritated by the stinging sensations the plant gave them. Either Nerdu wasn't a demon, which was impossible given what they had seen, or he was so strong that the plant didn't even bother him, and based on the way he was eating and curled into himself, Zenitsu doubted that he wasn't a demon. In any case, Shinobu-san made it obvious that they were in control of this youngster. Naruto pauses chewing and his shoulders straighten, but he doesn't look up when Kakashi's voice breaks through the awkward silence that had once again taken hold. "So, demon," he says, "I demand you tell us who you really are and whether you are an evil guy or not. I can't get a good reading on you, and it's driving me insane," Kakashi says, slamming his closed fist down on this folded leg. A strikingly dark bruise had appeared where Naruto had gripped him moments earlier, and the bizarre reminder of his continued weakness made Kakashi's skin crawl. "I am unable to." The blonde murmurs into the dimly lit chamber, "We can't." "Huh? Why not? I am aware that you are keeping something from us. For example, how did you just show up in the middle of the road? Why do you appear to be a demon at times and not at others? What's up with your odd multiple-person responses, too? We? Us? I find it incomprehensible." In his confused and enraged state, Kakashi was grinding his teeth, molars against molars. He fumes, huffing out angry puffs of air from his nose, wondering why Shinobu made them handle this scenario and why Gonpachiro went to save this bewildering demon youngster. He could be doing better things, like training or more training. "We don't have to answer your questions, bore." Naruto's head snapped up, and the three of them were staring into molten red instead of sky-blue eyes. The red irises seemed to draw them into the intense heat inside of them, as if they were staring into the world's burning core. "Why would we tell you anything, when you haven't told us anything about you? Like, we could trust you with our secrets, you pitiful fools." Naruto growled, his already oddly sharp fangs appearing to grow larger and more menacing. "Kakashi. You can't just ask people those kinds of questions," Tanjiro practically roared. "They are quite intimate, and while it's true that we don't know him well, Naruto is also correct that he doesn't know us at all. Therefore, it makes sense that he would feel defensive and offended." Seeing his friend behave in this manner was a little disheartening. Perhaps Kakashi wasn't very good at interpreting body language because Naruto was clearly in a defensive stance. In a look of discomfort and displeasure, Kakashi crossed his arms and pouted at Tanjiro, saying, "I'm not sorry, we deserve the right to know who he is." Tanjiro rubs his face and sighs, saying, "I know you're worried about our safety, but we need to do this in the right manner. Let's start from the beginning." He pokes a finger at the little wooden box that has been in the room's corner for a few days and says, "My name is Tanjiro Kamado, and I have a sister. Her name is Nezuko Kamado, and she's currently sleeping in her box. She's a demon, but she's very kind and sweet." "Yes, indeed. I am a member of the demon-slaying corps as well." With a bewildered expression, Naruto looks at Tanjiro, his eyes gradually returning to their brilliant blue hue. "All right. I guess I should introduce myself too," Zenitsu moans. "I'm a demon slayer by the name of Zenitsu Agatsuma." "Humph. Kanpanchiro told me to tell you my name, so that's all I'm doing. Kakashi is my name. And I kill demons." Kakashi frowns and pats his chest. "And if you dare hurt any of my companions, I will slice you to pieces before you can even blink." While the three friends were introducing themselves, Naruto had stopped eating. He sat with his hands resting on his linen slacks, peering intently at his three friends. My name is Naruto," he says, absent-mindedly scratching at his face. "I believe I am young. Perhaps 12 years old, although it's difficult. My mind is a whirlpool of memories." "Nothing more," Zenitsu tilts his head in question. "Only 12, Tanjiro mouths to himself. Considering how diminutive Naruto appears, he may even be shorter than him based on the length of his legs. "That's it," Naruto says, squinting his eyes as he considers. "The majority of our memories appear to be missing." "How about the plural stuff you've been using?" Zenitsu asks, his unkempt brows knitted in perplexity. "I'm not sure." Naruto taps his skull with one finger and says, "We are one person and it's hard to ever think of us being separated." His whiskered scars wrinkle as he bites his lower lip. "It's always been just us." "So, are you a demon?" Leaning forward, Zenitsu waves around his hand. He points his index and middle finger at Naruto as he continues talking. "It just doesn't make sense. You appear human 1 minute, and then your eyes turn red and you seem capable of robbing us of our souls." "Would you kill us?" shrugs Naruto. "No." "Yes." Naruto smiles, his eyes returning to that horrible blood-red hue. "Then you'll have to figure out on your own what we are." "That's totally uncool." Tanjiro chuckles quietly to himself. He had a sense that they would get along well, despite the fact that Naruto was somewhat unknown and unaccounted for to them. They all dozed off a little over the remainder of the night. Occasionally, they opened their eyes to discover Naruto curled up in a tight ball, slumped over on his futon. When daylight finally arrived, Tanjiro discovered that Naruto was wearing both Zenitsu's yellow-patterned yukata and his green checkered one. Under that additional warmth, Naruto appeared to have stretched out more and was even drooling on his arm as he smiled softly. Even while Kakashi was still asleep, his boar mask made faint snoring noises. There are 2 loud knocks on their wooden door. The other people in the room who were asleep are awakened by it. While Naruto leaps into a squat, Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Kakashi all leap up toward the door. His teeth were exposed as his fingers extended into claws. When the door opens, Shinobu appears. Her purple eyes search the room for a brief moment, focusing on Naruto's hunched body before grinning at the 4 of them. She looks at Naruto and raises an eyebrow. "It's so nice to see everyone getting along. It's been 2 days now, and since..." Naruto eases his body and effortlessly returns to his sitting position with his legs crossed. His Naruto is given to Hashira, the insect. Additionally, he gives her a sheepish, apologetic smile. She said, "And since Naruto woke up, it's time he gets judged by the others. We will decide if he is deemed safe enough to leave this space and walk around with guided assurance, meaning that you all, Kamado-san, Agatsuma-san, and Kakashi-kun, will have to keep an eye on him. Naruto won't be able to be left alone or out of eyesight." Her purple eyes once again fell on Naruto, and despite her words, they were kind and worried. "I might have acted too harshly when I first found you. You have yet tried to kill any of the young slayers, and besides your small moment of startled fear, you haven't tried to hurt them. The Kikushi have been reporting to me every hour since you've woken. Any questions you have about the butterfly estate, me or my friends, please don't be afraid to ask." She moves aside to make room for 2 Kikushi, who are carrying a large, heavy woolen sheet between them. "Because it's morning now, we will have to cover you before you leave the room." "Why?" Shinobu gives a bewildered blink. "So that the sun won't harm you." Now it's Naruto's time to appear perplexed. He tears the ropes that have been bound to him with an odd ease, tearing them into bits beneath his hands as he says, "But the sun doesn't hurt us. Watch." The boys are shocked to learn that he had the option to break free at any time but chose not to. But why? Then, for the first time in days, Naruto stands. Tanjiro's assessment of his height was accurate. Naruto's blonde, spiky head is only a few centimeters shorter than his. Naruto's first few steps are unsteady, as if his muscles aren't acclimated to walking on 2 legs or his legs had gone numb. In any case, he exits the shadowy storage area and enters the brightly lit hallway. The warm sun shines through large windows with glass panels, causing tiny dots of color to dance on the wooden floors. And Naruto stood beneath the sun's rays, unfazed by the flaming ball of gas in the sky. Actually, his blue eyes were merely made brighter by the sun. Shinobu looks in disbelief at the sight of a monster that is untouched by the sun. "Well, that's going to change some of today's events," that's for sure. Naruto crossed his arms behind his head and grinned broadly. Believe it. The scenario facing the demon slayers was confusing. None of them had anticipated that Naruto would be able to withstand the sun's rays and withstand the scorching death that befell so many other demons. The light of day was too strong even for Muzan. They surrounded the obviously bewildered blonde in a tight crescent shape. Naruto asks, "Did I do something wrong?" He appears to shrink even deeper into himself when he lowers his arms from behind his head. Shinobu inhales deeply, as if to prepare herself for whatever lies ahead. No, it was just something we did not expect to happen. It appears there are even more layers to our dear guest. Her purple eyes shift to the two Kikuchi figures that are still standing next to her, still waiting. Their visible eyes are likewise filled with a mixture of shock and terror. Please let the master know and the others that we will be there shortly. The Kikuchi bow respectfully to the insect Hashira and say, "Understood," before turning around and walking away. The big sheet of woolen linen was still being carried between them. Shinobu gestures for the younger lads to follow her, saying, "Well, let's get started then. Nezuko will be safe in the room, that is if you want to leave her there." Tanjiro peers into the room's darkness at his sister's wooden box, where she is sleeping. Will the Kikuchi watch her? Shinobu gives a head nod. Then I feel safe with leaving her there. Do we really have to come? Kakashi asked, turning his boar mask to face the nervous blonde with spiky hair. Yes. There was silence as they made their way to the meeting room, the polished oak floors shining in their warped reflections. There were none of the typical sounds of the estate, such as the slight conversation of the aides and servants. There were no longer even the sounds of training. The silence was too unsettling. With Naruto in the center and the younger demon slayers in the rear, Shinobu assumed the lead. He continued to walk with an odd limp, his steps unsteady and his gait irregular. Kakashi, who was observing him intently, thought that Naruto might not be accustomed to walking on two legs. The blonde was tripping a little, and the beast breather could tell that she was getting tense with every little slip-up. Seeing a sun-resistant demon walk in such a way was uncomfortable and ungainly. Was he lying? No. It was not clear. Shoji doors, which were typically open, were closed, revealing slowly shifting shadows that moved across the screens made of rice paper. Naruto had drifted back to nearly being within reach of the three teenage demon slayers as they made their way down hallway after corridor. Tanjiro caught a glimpse of his dejected expression as Naruto peered at each shuttered doorway. The tiny blonde had a lingering ozone odor that Tanjiro had grown to recognize as the start of a summer storm. He appeared distressed. Tanjiro had learned that Naruto was one of the few expressive demons. It didn't make him feel any better about this circumstance. Following his pal with burgundy hair, Zenitsu nibbled on a hangnail. Naruto, the bizarre demonic boy, was too human. Like other individuals, his heart skipped with excitement or dread. He was taking deep, soothing breaths, and Zenitsu could hear him doing so, perhaps out of fear. Naruto's heartbeat was excessively rapid. Strangely, Zenitsu was concerned about it. How could he care about a demon's emotions? They entered a vast room with thick wooden panels for all the walls and a polished floor, similar to the rest of the estate, which caused their reflections to appear strangely twisted. Shinobu guided them to 4 tiny floor pillows. The guys faced 8 critical faces as they all knelt on their knees. Before kneeling next to a small child whose hair had mint green tips, Shinobu kept moving forward. Kamado Tanjiro, was it not just a few weeks ago that we judged your demon sister? And, yet here you are once again with another demon, this time one that you don't even know. An unknown demon that you swear is not evil. A demon you want to protect for some mysterious reason. You have already put the Demon Slayer Corps in danger by having your sister here. With one more demon here, Kamado, we have reason to believe it is best to let you go, and release you from the core. Gyomei's voice was audible in the huge wooden room. It seemed as though those white eyes were condemning them, despite the fact that he was blind. Searching for something repulsive. Tanjiro buries his already clenched fists in his slacks. He lowers his head. Given what he had done, he had a feeling that this was what would happen. It was challenging enough to defend his sister, but attempting to argue for an unidentified demon with the ability to walk in the sun? There would be no way. Nerdoza's voice caught everyone's attention as he said, "Excuse me?" A little, tanned hand was raised in the air. "I don't understand anything that is currently happening, and I doubt I have any right to say anything. But, I don't appreciate the way you are talking to Tanjiro-kun. He hasn't done anything wrong, in fact. He has been the nicest person I've seen. Well, considering that I've only seen 6 people total here, he is the only nice person I've seen." Hashira lets out a gruff laugh, and Sanemi leans forward with his legs crossed. His uncontrollable laughter left his lips agape. He squinted at the blonde demon with his pale purple eyes. "You, a demon, want us to be kinder to Kamadu?" Nerdo scowls a little, unsure if he is being ridiculed. "Correct." The white-haired Hashira suddenly materialized in front of Nerdo, his katana out and its blade immediately soaked with fresh, dripping blood. "You are hilarious. But also," he said. A gust of wind swept through the room, tearing at their clothing and blowing hair into their eyes. Tanjiro shouts, "Nerdo," into the blustery gusts. In order to protect themselves from the wind, Zenitsu and Kakashi both shield their faces with their forearms. A soft plop reverberates in the calm chamber as the wind subsides. The 3 buddies turn to face Nerdo, who was seated to the left. With his hands pushed to the pouring wound that tore apart his white linen clothing and soaked the remainder in the deep ruby crimson of his blood, the younger blonde demon was crouched. Sanemi wipes his blade clean with Nerdo's bowed shoulders, joking, "For a demon that can walk in the sun you're pretty weak." The blade's still warm blood was splattered by the cloth. The flame Hashira cried out, "Sanemi. We were told not to harm the demon." Neither Rengoku nor the other Hashira had taken any action to halt the assault. If they wanted to, they all could have. Kakashi, Zenitsu, and Tanjiro were all aware of this. Did they put the blonde demon to the test? Sanemi snarls, his rough scars contorting his already ruthless visage. "My bad. To be honest, I did us a favor. This guy is the weakest demon I've ever seen." Nerdo spits blood onto the glossy wood after coughing it up. "Nerdo," he growls. Sanemi asks, her brows knit, "Excuse me?" "I said my name is Nerdo." "You fucker." Nerdo growls, raising his head. He showed off his bloody teeth even though the corner of his lips was splattered with blood. Long, sharp fangs in the light-filled chamber. Tanjiro was gradually growing used to the molten red that swirled in his blue eyes. Sanemi's pale purple eyes met those blazing red ones, and they said, "Remember it." Everyone jumped when Rengoku let out a deep belly laugh. "Nrdo. What a strange name for an even stranger demon. I like it." Sanemi turned his head in response to Rengoku, saying, "Oh, shut up, Kyujiro. You are not meant to like this. Monster." Nerdo took advantage of the situation to attack. Stretching his already healing wound, he leaped forward and got to his feet. He swung Sanemi over his head and slammed him against the wooden floor, his clawed hands hooking into Sanemi's standard Demon Slayer suit and putting his weight into his movement. With her fist aimed at that whiskered face, Sanemi wrenched out from behind Nerdo. A bone-shattering grasp prevented Sanemi from making a fist, the tan fingers burrowing into her light skin. Under the demon's grip, Sanemi felt his bones grinding against one another as he attempted to pull his hand free but was unsuccessful. Fuck. Naruto pushed forward with a crazy smile. Wind Hashira attempted to grab his sword, but Naruto was too near. Before he could even unsheath the blade, Naruto delivered another strong blow to his torso. The only thing Sanemi could do to prevent the blow from harming his organs was to regulate his breathing because he was not accustomed to close-quarters fighting. Just as Naruto was about to deliver another blow, a kunai shot through the air. Before a bare-handed Naruto could seize the kunai in midair, Sanemi managed to shove himself away. His hand seized the kunai's wrapped handle, flipping it in midair as he used the ring to spin the metal weapon around on his finger before launching it back at the sound Hashira. Tengen's face took on an odd expression as he grabbed his kunai before it could be impaled into his stomach. He took another kunai from one of his numerous pockets and launched it in the direction of the red-eyed creature once more. A dozen shuriken quickly followed the kunai as soon as it left his palm. The monster was being approached by the pointed stars flying in all directions. Tengen saw Naruto grab the kunai again and use it to deflect the metal stars that were spinning. How interesting. It seems our little demon boy might be familiar with the ninja arts. Tengen says. Sitting a few seats distant from Tengen, Shinobu only nodded. I had a strange feeling. When we first ran into the boy, he was fully demonized. His movements reminded me of you and your wives Tengen. Very aerodynamic, and he was doing that thing you ninjas all do. Oh. And what is that? He seemed to read us instantly. It was unnerving to look into those burning eyes and feel your soul laid bare. Rengoku remarked, I like him, and slapped his leg with his outstretched palm. We shall keep him. Tengen and Shinobu both exclaimed, Rengoku, you can't keep him. How about a test? Tengen asks, leaning back with his arms braced behind him and bearing his weight on his palms while gazing down at the blond lad covered in blood. A simple test to see how flamboyant he is. Tengen examined Naruto's grip on the metal kunai with bright purple eyes. The numerous thin, black scars that ran between his fingers and along his knuckles. Tengen had the same ones, having handled those sharp metal blades for years, so he knew where they came from. The shuriken's six-pointed ends were the source of all the severe nicks on the demon's arms. The little blonde child seemed to have some ninja training, as seen by his familiar stance. His arms hang loosely at his sides, ready for anything, his legs stretched just enough to balance his weight at his core, and his eyes are fixed on the smallest aspects of his surroundings. Although he appeared calm and at ease, Tengen was aware that the demon would be the first to react in the event of an emergency. Mitsuri asks, a test while he's injured? She was currently winding the end of her single braid, which was made out of her pink and lime green hair, around her finger. It seems almost unfair, no? Tengen makes a gesture with one hand while using the other as a leaning brace, saying, I think we don't need to worry for our dear little demon. Tengen gestures to the oddly boiling wound on the tan demon's torso with his purple painted nail. Look, the wound is almost completely healed as we speak. Show the crowd, little demon boy, show them how you're already healed. Naruto glares at Tengen, his eyes narrowed in genuine, roiling rage and his lips pushed back in a messy snarl. However, Naruto followed Tengen's instructions and drew back the thin, torn cloth to reveal a faint, red, crusted scar where the katana had cut him. From one side of his torso to the other, the scar extended. See? How flamboyant is it that the little demon heals so quickly? And without needing to consume human flesh. I don't eat people though, Naruto declares, attempting to conceal his torso once more with the torn garments. The Hashira with heterochromia posed the query, so, you say, but who are we to believe you? Let's say you don't eat humans, which is impossible, what would a demon like you eat? A sneer appeared to be pulled into Abanai's veiled lower face. Vegetables? No, they're gross in any form. I mostly eat ramen, miso ramen with extra tonkatsu if we can afford it. Ramen? Naruto said, yes. It is a gift from Kami-sama. One of the Hashira, the one with the split-patterned Haori, kept turning from Tanjiro to Naruto, as Naruto saw. They scanned Naruto's face and body with their lifeless blue eyes. They had an odd look on their faces. With his turquoise and yellow eyes practically blazing at Naruto, Obani asks, I find it strange that a demon who claims to have no memory can recall their favorite human food. Have you been lying to the young demon slayers to gain their trust, demon? Kaburamaru, his snake, glides down his torso while his tiny pink tongue flicks the air to sample the blonde demon's essence. A peculiar, tight sensation crawls in Naruto's stomach as his gaze is drawn to the snake. The sight of the sliding snake's pink eyes and shimmering white scales causes it to contract and whirl. And Naruto growls when Kaburamaru lifts its head to smell Naruto. Like the searing burning in their stomach, hazy recollections of someone with yellow-slit eyes and skin as white as snow swirl in their mind, stealing away something, someone, that they value. The snake expands its lips and hisses back, making the heat even more intense. In his mind, Orochimaru is screamed repeated and repeated. Naruto's body was like a taut spring, and he surged before he realized what he was doing. Thick fingers curled into sharp claws as he jumped into the gap between himself and Obani, using the strength in his legs. When Obani saw the impending onslaught, he swiftly rolled away, and the other Hashira nearby followed suit. Every one of their katana was drawn, the wild picture of Naruto reflected on their blades by the gleaming metal. What are you thinking, stupid demon? You'd think you can just attack one of the great Hashira without us going for the kill? Now hold still as I slice your damned head off. Like, what Shinobu should have done when she encountered you. Obani pointed his katana directly at the demon's tan neck column. The weird voice in his head continued to yell at Naruto as he saw Obani move in slow motion. Kill, kill, kill. He had the uncanny sensation that something was commanding his muscles, body, and mind from beneath his skin. His gaze focused on the even slower moving katana blade sweeping in his direction as well as all the tiny moving dust. All of the slayers there could see that Obani had transformed when Naruto glanced up into his face. You think you can kill us? He felt something different on the inside than when Sanemi attempted to attack the demon moments before. It poured from him like a second heartbeat, as if the little blonde demon had been cocooned by a wave of fire and searing ozone. Tanjiro was holding his breath in the rear of the room. Naruto's typical summer storm aroma wasn't the same as this odor. It smelled like burning earth and rotting eggs, which somehow reminded him of the smell he imagined an erupting volcano would have. Molten earth and poisonous gas. Obani averted his gaze from the creature and its fiery red eyes. Seeing his own damnation was like peering into hell. Above the demon's head, Sanemi met his gaze, and the two of them decided that this problem had to be resolved right away. Together with Sanemi, Obani withdrew his blade and swung in opposing arches to chop the spiky blonde head from its body. Something strange occurred when the blades got closer to the still snarling creature. They stared as finger-shaped dents twisted across the metal bend, their swords stopped millimeters from the strained neck. Sanemi screams, "What the hell," and attempts to pull the blade away, but it doesn't work. As he attempts to remove it from the gigantic grip that appeared to be holding it, his muscles tense. Nor was Obani getting any better. His forearms trembled, and his knuckles were white. They were unable to see what was holding their katana. Demon, if this is your doing, we command you stop it at once. With its mouth twisted in a ruthless grin, the blonde devil just kept grinning at them. They saw its odd whisker markings thicken and its fangs sharpen. Why? You just tried to decapitate us. We have the right to defend our neck, plus we aren't hurting you in any way. Just, stopping you from killing us. The demon tilted his head. piercing red eyes that stared from the crushing metal blades to the faces of Obani and Sanemi. If we let go, will you swear on your name that you won't try to kill us? It's rather difficult currently protecting this body and the boy without you all trying to get our head to roll. The flame Hashira asks, The boy? Are you two different entities? His white teeth shine in the room as his golden eyes flash and his face twitches into a wide smile. Interesting indeed, he says, sliding his sword back into the katana sheath before slapping his fellow Hashira on the back with a big palm. Come now, Obani-san and Sanemi-san. Agree to the demon's terms. Things have gotten quite intriguing, and it would be shame to end the poor demon's life so quickly without us learning more about them. Rengoku's piercing voice reverberated. Let's settle down. Take a few deep breaths, and rethink about this situation. Plus, dear Kamado-san seems to have faith in this demon. If they are two different people, the demon and its counterpart, then we can truly have some fun. And if the demon is lying to us, then I'll personally slice its head off. The blonde demon's eyes are still molten, and Rengoku's face leans in close to them. His broad smile seems even more menacing now. I promise. The odd force that was holding Obani and Sanemi's blades appears to release them. There were no finger dents in the shaped metal, and their katana blades were not bent and scarred as they had been just a few moments before. In actuality, they appeared fine. Was it all simply a feverish fantasy of their shared imagination? Did the devil have the ability to do that? In any case, they moved away from the demon and sheathed their katana. The demon addressed Hashira, the flame, saying, You're a strange one. Rengoku says, I'll take that as a compliment. Now, it's time to say goodnight, as his hand flies out and strikes Naruto's neck with the side of it. Naruto's body collapses into the hardwood floor as his eyes roll up. He is not caught. Zenitsu, Kakashi, and Tanjiro all flinch as Naruto's body hits the floor. After bouncing once and again, the spiky blonde head remained motionless. Like Hashira standing underneath him, he is sprawled prone with his four limbs crookedly bent. As soon as Kyojuro struck him unconscious, the darkness that had surrounded him vanished. Zenitsu murmurs, It sounds like he cracked his skull. Tanjiro leans forward as if he were ready to get up and assist, asking, The Hashira aren't going to help him? Tanjiro, sit down. Kakashi holds his friend in position by grabbing his checkered green haori. You know they aren't going to help him, but they are also not going to kill him. You heard Rengoku-san. After taking a big gulp, Tanjiro calms down and observes to see what will happen next. Rengoku looks down at the shattered body before turning on his heel and stalking off. Ju, if you could, please take this boy into a spare room. Something more durable than the broom closet he was in earlier. Keep an eye on the demon boy as well. I don't trust him.